If you're an investor looking for highly disruptive companies in the green energy space, then look no further than HPQ Silicon, who, with the support of two world-class technology partners in North America and in Europe, is developing brand new green processes critical to making the critical materials needed to reach net zero emissions. Their activities are centered around four pillars that I can summarize as follows: silicon-based anode materials, on-demand hydrogen production, high-purity silicon, and fume silica. And more than just lip service, they've already got countless NDAs with some of the biggest players in the world and have published technical milestones that, quite frankly, shatter the status quo across each of these verticals. And today, the press release we're talking about, HPQ Silicon signs MOU with Impact Funding Europe for collaboration in EU funding programs. Bernard, my man, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, George. Long time no see.
And we're going to address that in a second, why we didn't talk on April 18th. We're definitely going to address that in a second. But let's go right into this one first. The collaboration itself with Impact Funding Europe, IFE, seems pretty straightforward. I don't think that needs explanation. You're essentially trying to secure funding under EU programs to advance your projects we've already talked about.
Yeah.
Why are you doing this? Why are you going down this path now?
Okay. Well, we're going down this path now. You have to understand how it works in Europe to get those type of fundings. It is very rarely done like one company funding in those issues, unless you're mega, billion-dollar a year company. And then those billion-dollar companies basically will create a cluster to do the R&D development moving forward. It's not the same thing as in the United States or in Canada, or mostly Canada, because that's what I know. There's a lot of money. There's a lot of money from the EU, plus there's a lot of money from every, government, like Germany. And then there's money from different states. It's like there is money on multiple levels. And to be able to basically have access to these funding, you sort of have to have a champion that understands the rules and those things. Okay? And these are German-based experts, so they do it in German, so which is not a language that I speak. I basically can do Google German, but that's about as far as I can go. But it is extraordinarily important to be able to be part of a cluster of things. So this is why we went down this route, because this is a very important. These are people that have a lot of expertise, that understand what's required, understand how HPQ's processes, can be included in some of the bigger fundraising or grant writing that they're coming in. Where do we come in within those issues? Because one of the things they do there in Europe is to mitigate the risk. They put multiple projects under one umbrella and then get it to work. So it's very different than one-on-one. So what's really critical about this is that HPQ has technologies that interest these guys to come and do it, because as you clearly see from the press release, there is no discussion about us having to pay them. It's like in Canada, when you hire grant writers, I remember that there were some grant writers that were coming to see me for SDDC. I think they wanted like something $100,000 up front, plus like almost half of the freaking grant money coming in. This is not the same thing. This is a success-based concept. So since it's a success-based, if the technology didn't interest them, they wouldn't bother with me. So
I was going to say that because it's success-based, right? They're motivated to make sure they bring on good companies like HPQ, as opposed to George Calm green processes calling up and say, "Can you find me some money?" They're not going to waste their time doing that. If they're taking an upfront fee, sure, they'd sign George Calm and Agoracom, and they're just racking in those $100,000 fees. So, is there, if you could maybe give us some flavor for the context of the conversation, you guys, is there a high degree of confidence on behalf of IFE that this should be successful, and maybe not 100% successful, but very successful? What's the general feeling as you guys enter this agreement?
Very, very, very confident about it. And what's really interesting is from those discussion, okay, I sort of realized that we had probably another asset or another vision to one of our technology that we have that can also be of a lot of interest. You understand that there's a lot of green technology, green processes, and green, and basically green fuel and those issues. And when we were discussing what we had to offer in the battery space, the discussion came out about, eventually the QRR could be a useful material to do our feedstock. And then from the discussion, because there's a hydrogen section to it, there's a lot of work now being done with regard to synthetic energy, synthetic fuel using hydrogen and carbon, okay, to make either aviation fuel or other type of fuels that they can then be used. If you have a green hydrogen and you combine it with a green carbon source or a low carbon source, then you end up making a low carbon material that can be used to power ships and those issues. So there's a high demand for it. And lo and behold, one of the things that QRR does is, in addition to doing silicon, we do carbon gas. So from those discussions, we suddenly saw, oh, so we can have the silicon as feedstock to make the battery material that's going to help in energy storage, which is starting to play a bigger role. And by doing it, we could have two revenue stream for our QRR. So that starts to play into the dynamic, and that wasn't something that was on my radar until I had those discussions with them, and it became on their radar because it's something very important for them and other groups that we're in discussion with. So
it's very clear that this isn't just a, hey, Bernard, you want to strike a deal with us? Yes, we're going to go out there and just pitch it and see what happens. There have been really deep discussions, even derivatives going into the QRR, as opposed to just, because in the press release you mentioned there's the green hydrogen. You're focusing on two of the pillars, two of your four pillars, the green hydrogen and the silicon-based anode material. So it's clear that these discussions have gone pretty deep. So is it fair to say there's a high level of expectation of success, generally speaking?
there's a high enough level of expectation for them to see, because they mentioned that we fit in within some of the projects that they're doing. They wrote this. An HPQ Silicon is effective technology that could be supported under these programs. So they see the potential of it, which is not the same thing as in Canada. It's like, oh, don't get me started. And so it's
Canada's dropped the ball, that's for sure.
Oh, they dropped the ball they dropped the ball in so many areas. So by being a public company, by being a small public company, we are actually being punished when we do R&D. Like in France, we get 30% back of what we spend in R&D. In Canada, we get 5%, 10% back, and the rest is an eventual tax. Everything, the bureaucrats in Ottawa think that, because we're publicly traded, we're $1 billion company, therefore, we don't need those things. So they put so many barriers to entry that are not there in Europe. So might as well go there. And what's even crazier is that the Canadian government then goes partners with the German, and then you can have cross project. Don't ask me.
Well, that explains also why you go with IFE, and you already got a €90,000 grant for the on-demand hydrogen. I can't remember.
No, George.
4 or 5 months ago, and
the €90,000, okay, was for our battery work. It was a grant from the French government with regard to the preliminary work we're doing in the battery work. Okay, for the hydrogen, it's a complete other type of grants that are going to be coming that we're in discussion, getting all the bureaucratic mess. Not to say that Europe is perfect and not bureaucratic, okay, but they're more. Once you understand how the system works, you can work more. But you can't come in as a Canadian company and says, "Hello, I'd like." No, that's not how it works. We've been working, discussing, and advancing, but luckily we have great technologies that we're developing. We have reached some level of maturities, which makes them interesting. And all these things put together put us in a great position to be able to have partners like IFE that want to work with us.
So this kind of funding covers, from your press release, 60 to 100% of costs for the two verticals that you've identified right now. Have you guys calculated what are the costs for each to get? Because this is not open-ended. Hey, you might get a $100 million grant. It's based on costs for each of those two verticals. Do you got a sense of the size, if everything went well, what the size of the grants could potentially be? Ballpark. I'm not trying to pin you down, but just trying to give everyone at home a bit of context into what you may be, what you might, what we all should potentially expect.
Over multiple phases, okay, they could be in the 20 to 30 million euros to maybe even up to 50 million euros, but that would basically bring us up almost to commercial size, but it's sometimes we'll be part of an envelope that's going to be bigger, and then we'll get our share of the work regard to what we're doing. This is accelerated, in the last few weeks, and this is what's moving forward, which is good in the sense of HPQ. We are starting to check a lot of having a lot of check marks that we needed to do to advance in these next phases, and this is coming online. This is coming to fruition. This is moving forward. So on many of our verticalities, there's interest. For me, the QRR, it's always been a great technology. We've reached some great milestone with it, but it isn't as economically sexy at this stage as the fume silica reactor is.
Sure.
So when you have to do some arbitrage between two different projects, fume silica takes the lead. Okay. Then comes the battery material. Okay. Hydrogen's a bit, the autonomous hydrogen is a bit on itself. It's sort of like a beast on its own that's going to work out by its own, because it's going to have mostly military-based interests in developing in those issues. But so we have the fume silica, which is as a commercial venue, incredible. I don't think we're going to need grants to get that to commercial stage. I think once we've validated the EBITDA margin that we have, will make us basically unbeatable. And it's coming to fruition. I understand until we get the pilot plant working, but this is coming. People are maybe looking on the sideline. That's one issue. Now we got the silicon for batteries, and now we have not a new opportunity. Yes, there's a new opportunity with using the QRR. The uniqueness of the QRR, which is the fact it's an enclosed system. Okay. Therefore, we only generate carbon gas, and we do generate a lot of it because, as I told you many times, silicon is one of the largest emitter of carbon per kilogram of material manufactured. So if you can have a process where we can, you have green energy or green enough energy to make your silicon, the carbon gas is then used to convert it into another value-added product. You got two revenue sources coming out of the same process. So your investment to build the commercial plant becomes more economical in those issues. Now, we're still at the beginning of this, but it makes sense and it looks like an interesting future. So for me, I'm sort of very excited about the fact that, okay, the QRR now is as a way for me, because I'm going to go get government grants to advance it, to continue to develop and push it forward as I focus on the fume silica, silicon for batteries, and the hydrogen.
If successful, even in a best case scenario, so we talked about context in terms of amounts, quantity. Now I want to talk about dates or timing expectations. What's the timeline on something like this? If you're successful, best case scenario, is a potentially could we see grant funding in 3 months, 6 months, 30 days, 9 months? Just give everyone at home a little bit of context for expectation. And I know, by the way, I'm not quoting you. I'm not gonna say, oh, you better have it at this time, but I'm sure you guys have all discussed, generally speaking, what this process looks like. It's not a week because it's not a pizza. And it's not 2 years, I'm assuming, because you're not building a house. So it's got to be somewhere in between. What can you tell us, if anything, about timing?
Well, it's because we are incorporated into applications that are already open and coming in. I don't know. Like, I'm going to be honest. My gut's feeling is by, during Q3, Q4, we will get a very, very good idea where we're going. I'm hoping more Q3 than Q4. And then we know where we're going to go and move forward. I'll give it another example to you understand the timeline. Although it's a Canadian example, it's the same thing. There's an open competition for new technologies for silicon batteries that was opened by the Canadian government. So the entire process to do it is over. It's just 12 months to get to the decision. So it's like you gotta submit the preliminary application. You gotta go through that one. Then you gotta submit a second one and a third one. It's very long. I don't think it's going to be that long for the European, because I think that the structure has been very designed. These guys have been doing this for 15 years. They understand where they can fit us into the project, as opposed to us trying to figure out where we see. The issue usually is you got to be able to fit in within the government program. Okay. And sometimes, and most of the time, okay, the way you are doesn't fit in the government program. So at the end, you end up having to figure a way to do it. That's what happened with us when they invested in Quebec when they came in. That's why it was very, very long. But there it's different. These guys understand the concept and they say, you can fit here, or you can fit there. So it's going to be, I believe it's going to be a lot easier than what we experience here. Like if I give you an idea, with the Quebec government to get the funding for the QRR, I think it was a year and a half of work.
Yeah, in fairness, Europe is an entire continent versus Canada, which is a country. So it makes sense that they've got more resources. They're probably more aggressive on it. And just the very nature of Europe is they've been ahead of this far more than North America. All right, so that gives a sense. Go ahead. What were we gonna say there?
No, I'm just saying the interesting is, yes, Canada is a country, but the beauty about Europe is a group. It's a group, okay. But then there's individual countries, and then there's individual states within the individual country. So it's
unbelievable. You got three levels. You got federal. Sorry, you got the continental, you got federal, and you even got regional. So that's amazing. Well, look, what is it about? Obviously, I know you're very deliberate in what you do. You're still lean and mean, so you don't want it. You can't afford to waste time and energy and all of that. What is it about the IFE track record of success that led you to agreeing to go with them? I know there was some explanation in the press release, but have they had how good is has their track record of success been working with other companies like yours?
Their track record is very, very good. Excellent, I would dare to say. And they've been doing this for a long time. One of the things that really interests me, because I was introduced to them by contacts of mine, is the fact that they accept the work basically just based on success fee. People are successful, okay, when they're successful fee. And I was told, and I believe that's accurate, that they get, they usually get what they want 80% of 80 to 90% of the time. They go, because they understand the process, they don't bother making an application. They know it's not going to work. So that's where you end up working with them. And these type of guys wouldn't take a pro bono type, not a pro bono, but basically a success fee written. Okay.
Yeah, they probably want to take a bigger chunk of a success fee as opposed to an upfront fee if they're good at what they do.
You know what? My experience with the people in Canada that came and offered me, they were still greedy bastards at the end.
Yeah, well, listen, that's the world of finance, right? There's a great Greek saying, "He who pays the band dictates the music." So if they're bringing the money, they usually dictate the terms. Hey, by the way, I mentioned this kind of a little bit earlier. How does this reconcile with that previous grant you got out of France? I believe it was 90,000 euros, and that was because that was the max you could get at that first stage. I remember when we had an interview talking about it, you said now that first 90,000 euro stage is passed, we may be able to get as much as 2 or 3 million. I think that was the number used. Don't everyone at home don't quote me, but I'm pretty sure it's the number used. Does this clash at all, or is this just more feelers out there trying to get the grant money in for what you're doing?
No, it doesn't clash at all. As I said, okay, these guys are German based, so they know more German based type of funding, EU than German. The other funding was French government based, so that's another issue. There's also venues of in those areas. So everything is sort of finally advancing in the right direction, putting into place. We needed to start it to have some good results or some very interesting results to be able to get ourselves to this position. The first grant allowed us to start to do the work, which we started to get the the battery results coming out. Oh, and I'd like to make an côté, like Novation being a French company, although it's an affiliated company of HPQ, they sometimes will participate in French projects, French marketing event, okay? Where we won't and basically, you know, do it in France for France. So they probably won't talk too much about their Canadian partner, which is totally correct. That doesn't mean we're not involved there. Okay.
Sure, of course. Last question for you.
Good.
Sorry, did something come
No,
up?
it's okay. It's okay. No, it's okay.
April, switching gears. So that's everything about that press release I wanted to ask you. April 18th, you announced that testing of your silicon-based anode materials continues to deliver 14% performance improvement versus graphite benchmark batteries with minimal battery degradation rates at 125 cycles. We didn't do an interview because I was in Dubai and I was trying to flood the biblical historic rains and floods.
You're trying
there,
to survive the biblical historical floods, yes.
Which at the end of the day was still a better time than doing an interview with you.
Well, that's kind
okay.
That's kind of
As I was commandeering buses to take me through 4 or 5 feet of water to get me to my hotel. So that's why we didn't talk about this. So we can't spend a ton of time on this because that was a separate press release, but a couple of questions there. Why what seems like the small jump, because I saw some commentary too from some investors saying, why the small jump in results from 100 cycles to 125 cycles when before you've gone like 25, 50, 100, almost seems like you're doubling along the way. And then how happy are you with the results and how what should shareholders be gleaning from those results?
Okay. With regard to this, the cycle event and those issues, the cycle event and those issues, it's basically, you have to remember what our objective was with these tests, okay? Just to demonstrate that we controlled enough the process, understood it enough, okay, for make 16250 batteries, okay, that were very, very good. So it was all part of a concept. So we set up originally just looking for maybe 100 test results, okay? And then we got the 100 tests. It says, oh, maybe we need more test results. So we continued to moving on. But at one point, okay, there's no, for this is a first iteration of a first thing. We know that's not the final version. So there's no logic for us to try to push it to
Makes sense.
to infinity and beyond. We got a lot of the information we wanted to know. And we now understand a heck of a lot more about battery testing, how it's done, how those issues are done, what's going to be the result, how are we going to get this, how can we replicate those things internally. This was a massive learning curve where we basically caught up. Okay, we basically caught up with probably like the 10 leaders out there. We're almost there. Okay, and then we said, okay, now we have other objectives with other material. I could issue more results, but at one point it's like it's a non-optimized first battery. Okay, so you know, people should read the press release and not try to put too much into it. We just basically said, okay, 125 seconds, and this is very good for the industry for where we're going with this. Okay, it's going to be very good. But you know, I feel very confident now. I'm more excited about getting the results from the second generation we do. We'll get a series of test results for the second generation of results, and we'll figure it out, and we'll build a third generation of result. We're getting moving. It's all part of demonstrating, okay, and it's all part of how we're going to get funding in those issues. It's all part of that, which is going to allow us to basically get the grant funding in those issues going forward.
So what then? So I guess we shouldn't be looking for any more cycles testing out of this iteration. I'm gleaning that from what you're saying.
What is the
so
what
should we come to expect now? Timeline on that side as well? Is it when does the next iterations testing start
George,
ballpark,
yeah, but you know full well that I have to be very cautious about those issues.
Of course, that's why I'm asking if you can.
So ballpark we made them. They're done by outside consultant, contractor. So we get the results, then we have to analyze the result, understand the result, and then basically says, okay, this is what they mean. So, and we have a strategy that we're following in this regard to battery. Okay, we have goals that we want to reach. we understand where the industry is. As I said, we caught up very quickly to where the industry is. And then we're going to be moving on how we can reach, who knows, maybe we'll end up doing a world record battery energy density for those size batteries and them to demonstrate our full control over it. And there's so many iteration where we can improve the process. Okay. So I'm very excited about the battery. What people have to understand is a bit like in Fume Silica for the battery side, it's really an interesting industry, okay? Because it's always a balance between energy density and energy capacity. So it's always an offshoot of those two issues. So often for one type of application, you need one type of batteries, for the other type of application. So what we're learning from all of this is very important, and we're in the right direction. I never had any anticipation that our first time out batteries, okay, would equivalent what StoreDot is doing. That doesn't make any sense. But for what we have done, where we have reached, we know where we are with regard to silicone material for batteries. We know we're incredibly well positioned. This is going to be a massive market for different application, from EVs, which is sort of like everybody talks EVs about the holy grail. There are so many other applications that need batteries with different timeline, different capacities. So the market is tremendous. So the opportunities for us are in the right direction, and we are showing a very promising results for us to continue to move forward in this regard.
I've asked this before, but I can't remember what your last answer was in the last interview, but has the phone been ringing? Have people taken notice? Have there some people whose eyebrows have, kind of perked up seeing the results you've done, the results you've reported already just in your first, in your first iteration?
Yeah, there's a bit of perking up, but we know what we need to do to get the phone call ringing. So, and that's what we're focused on doing it right now. And right now there is there's been a lot of other battery companies that have started to move into those issues, and everything has been sort of like going through difficulties of scaling up. So we're learning from all those issues and making ourselves, we're very well positioned. I have absolutely no worries that it's going to be just like Fume Silica. Once we get our iteration, our material fully done, they're gonna come at it. And the Fume Silica thing, the interesting thing is, we had one party that was much more open and interested, and I think they're gonna have a leadership position as we move forward. So I'm very excited about that.
All right, hold on there, because I was gonna ask you, since you talked about Fume Silica, I was gonna say we're dead smack in the middle of Q2, pretty much dead smack in the middle of Q2. How's the Fume Silica side going with the pilot plant? And then you kind of threw us a bit of a nibble there. Can you kind of expand on that a little bit? So when you say one party, is that one of the NDA parties? Is it somebody else?
Yeah, we signed NDA with 3 different companies and a 4th group.
Yeah.
Like in every project, there are some people that are more open to new technologies, and some other are more there to defend their own turf, which in the case of Fume Silica really doesn't bother me, because the competitive advantage we have, an EBITDA margin between 65 to 80%, it's unheard of. And we know we can reach those milestones. So no,
you almost saved the best for last. You almost saved the best for last. It's kind of inadvertently, because it wasn't even part of this interview. So
no,
that's really encouraging.
It's part of all the things that HPQ is going on. If you take a look over the last 6 weeks, okay, a lot of things are finally falling into the right places. The overhang situation with pyrogenesis was resolved, and I think it was clearly well explained when Peter bought the balance of the situation. Which was a good
nice
investment
recovery
for him.
Since then, and a lot of people are happy about that.
Nice recovery from them. Fume Silica is still our #1 technology process that will generate a lot of shareholder value, I believe, in the coming 12 months. Okay. Remember what I said at one point, and I continue to emphasize this. Okay. I said that HPQ had multiple verticalities that could support our market cap at a high. And I still strongly believe that, and I strongly believe that we're executing on this. Now, read between the lines. Sometimes when you deal with companies that are how can I say this? By a magnitude of scale 1,000 times bigger than HPQ, okay? Their speed of moving forward is not the same as us. But that does not mean that they're not interested. Far from it. Far from it. Take it from me, from the discussion I have had with those people, okay? If they're not interested in you, they will tell you to get lost very quickly.
I'm gonna pick up the phone. They're just gonna ghost you because they got 1,000 other things to do.
They won't answer. They won't come back to you. They won't discuss. But I can say I'm still having a discussion with one of the groups, and the guy came back to me and says, you got really made some nice material. So everybody's waiting for us to make it at the pilot scale. And Pyrogenesis and us are extremely confident that we will, because there's a lot of similarities and some differences, but the similarities with regard to the scaling up we did for the QRR. So the QRR was our first scaling up. This one is our second one. So we're much more focused on where it is. And the good news on the QRR, on the Fume Silica, is that the team at Pyro is now more experienced, and it's the same team that took over the QRR project that's now running the Fume Silica. So I have high confidence that we will reach the goal. And I think it's going to be a very big winner for both HPQ and Pyrogenesis.
I wasn't really expecting to talk to you at all about Fume Silica. In fact, in the questions I prepared, I don't have anything about Fume Silica for you. I only brought it up because you kind of dovetailed there a couple of times with the discussion about IFE and all that. So that's an amazing way to end the interview.
That's one of the reasons why we don't.
Shareholders going to be happy. They're going to be buzzing about it.
That's one of the reasons we don't mention Fume Silica and the IFE type of projects. Because
you're basically saying it won't need grant funding. It sounds like.
No.
Wow. Okay. Let's end it there. Let's end it right there. That's a great place to end it. Thank you. Thanks for joining us, Bernard. Nice news today, but what's more important is kind of the derivative conversation we had from that. Because otherwise it was I start off by saying the collaboration itself seems pretty straightforward, because that was the first thing I thought. I go, this is pretty straightforward. There's not a lot to talk about, but let's go down the path and look where we ended. So thanks for joining us, my man. Can't wait to have you back. I'm not going anywhere until the end of the month. So hopefully you'll be able to get me on before I go versus after I go. But I'll be happy to have you back whenever, my friend. And thanks for doing this today.
Thank you. Bye.
For anybody at home, you've been watching or you've listened by podcast on Spotify, Google, Apple, your favorite podcast platform. To Bernard Tudillon, he's a CEO at HPQ Silicon, trades in Canada, HPQ. For friends in the US, HPQ-IFE. For those new to the story, there's a lot going on here. I mean, a lot, probably more than any other company we work with. So head to the company's profile page on Agoracom to kind of get that 30,000-foot overview. But then once you've got that understanding, big picture, make sure you get to the company's website, because the company's decks are always awesome, always very deep and detailed, as is the website with fantastic information. So step one, then step two, and hopefully today you discovered your next amazing small cap tech company. Thanks for joining us. Have a great day. See you next time.
Hey Small Cap fam, I hope you loved this interview because more than a dozen people were involved in its production for the sole purpose of making you happy. If so, can you take a moment to support both our awesome guest company and Agoracom? Your engagement means the world to us. First, if you enjoyed this video, give us a thumbs up by tapping that like button. It's a small gesture that helps this interview reach even more potential investors to discover today's guest. Second, we would love to hear your feedback on this interview, so please leave a comment below. Be sure to keep it clean, but feel free to poke fun at George. If you loved what you heard on today's video and want to dig into our guest company right away, take a look at the links in the description below. And while you're at it, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell to never miss another great Agoracom small cap video. Thank you so much. We couldn't do any of this without you. Make sure to come back soon.